Today we'll be learning about how God is faithful to use his people despite their sins and weaknesses. This story in the Bible is about how God chooses us for a promise. One day, Moses was taking care of some sheep for his wife's father when he came to the mountain where they gave sacrifices to God. He noticed the craziest thing. There was a bush on fire. Except it wasn't like a normal bush fire because even though it was on fire, it wasn't burning up. Moses was staring in amazement when a voice spoke out of the bush and said, "Moses, Moses." Immediately, Moses knew it was the voice of God. God spoke to him again and said, "Take your sandals off and do not come closer because the ground you are standing on is holy." Moses did as God told him and hid his face because he was too afraid to look at God. Then God spoke again and told Moses that he had seen how God's people were being treated in Egypt. They had been crying out in prayer for God to help them and save them from the suffering of being slaves. God told Moses it was time to answer those prayers, to bring his people out of Egypt. God would move them towards the land he had promised Abraham that his people would have one day. This land would be flowing with milk and honey, and it would be a place where no one would punish them for being God's people. God told Moses to go back to Egypt and tell his people what he had said. Moses immediately thought that was a crazy idea. How could he prove that it was really God who sent him? God told him to say it was, "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob who sent Moses." But Moses still didn't think that the people would believe that he had a message from God. God told Moses to go to Pharaoh and say that God had sent him to tell Pharaoh to let God's people go so that they could worship him. God knew that Pharaoh would not listen, and God was going to have to do some mighty wonders to show his power, but eventually Pharaoh would let them go. But Moses, he sort of freaked out. He didn't think that this sounded like a plan that he fit into very well. He started telling God the reasons why it wasn't going to work. First, he thought that God was wrong, that the people would just believe that this was a message from God. They were going to need some sort of sign. God told him, "What is in your hand?" And Moses answered, "My staff." God told him to throw the staff down onto the ground, and when he did, the staff became a snake. Moses took off running, but God told him to come back and pick it up by the tail. And when he did, the snake turned back into a staff. Then God told Moses that he should put his hand inside his cloak. And when Moses pulled out his hand, it looked sick and white like snow. God told him to put his hand back into his cloak, and this time when he took it out, it was back to normal. God said that if the people didn't believe Moses, he should do these signs and prove that God had sent him. He also said that Moses should take some water out of the river and turn it into blood for yet another sign. So, although God had already selected Moses to be the leader, and he would keep his promises of that calling, he calmed Moses' fears by giving him these reassuring signs. But Moses still wasn't convinced. Next, he told God he wasn't good at speaking to big groups, so he shouldn't be the one to lead all of God's people. God answered that Moses was the one that he chose, and God was the one to make Moses' mouth, and Moses could trust God. But Moses responded by pleading with God to send somebody else. God was angry that Moses was being so stubborn, but he was still kind to Moses. He said that Moses was the one that he had chosen to lead the people, and that wasn't going to change, but that Moses could tell God's message to his brother Aaron and let Aaron speak to the crowds. God was clear that he would be with Moses and provide for him, and that God had chosen Moses to lead his people. Moses went from a baby in a basket to a man running away from his sin to one chosen by God to deliver his people to the land that they had been promised. Moses was still a sinner, and he couldn't do everything perfectly, so he thought that meant that somebody else would be better to serve God. But God had chosen Moses, and he was going to use him in amazing ways.
Hey kids, I hope you guys are doing great. Right now it is time for our Bible story. Today we will be going through Exodus 11 through 12, which is the 10th plague. So, let's just jump right into it. Let's first talk about what the plagues are. For hundreds of years, Israel was in slavery at the hands of the Egyptians and their Pharaoh. God had chosen Moses to free the Israelites from the slavery. Pharaoh did not want the Israelites to be free, and so he refused Moses' plea to let his people go. Because Pharaoh would not be convinced God sent the 10 plagues to Egypt, which were disasters meant to show God's power. Some of these plagues included frogs to swarm the whole nation, locusts to eat all the crops, and even a massive storm. However, Pharaoh would still not let the Israelites go. The 10th plague was the final and most serious of all the plagues. God instructed all the Israelites to paint sheep's blood on the doorframes of all their homes. This might sound very strange, but God has a plan. One night, God sent one of his angels down to Egypt, called the Angel of Death. Every house with blood on the door would be safe from the Angel of Death, but any house without the sheep's blood would suffer the 10th plague. For every family with no blood on the door, the firstborn son of that family would die. God used this plague to show his power over even death, and this final plague was enough to convince Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. Even though this story is very serious, there are also many things that we can learn from it. One of the things that we learn is that God has a plan. When he told the Israelites to paint sheep's blood on the door, that sounds very strange and it also sounds kind of silly. But God used his plan to free the Israelites from death. Another thing that we can learn is that God is very powerful, even more powerful than death. God gives life, but he also takes it away. And unfortunately for Pharaoh, he learned that the hard way. One of the last things that we can learn is that we need to follow God's instructions. It does seem very weird and it does seem very strange that that the Israelites had to paint blood on the door, but because they followed instructions, they were saved from death. Unfortunately, the Israelites who did not follow God's instructions lost their firstborn sons. That's very unfortunate. But you might be wondering, well, God isn't telling me to put blood on my door, then what should I be doing? Well, God has plenty of instructions given to us through the Bible. Now, some of these instructions might be honor your father and mother and do not lie. These are all very basic instructions that God gives to us in the Bible. And because God has a plan, God is powerful and he also cares for us very much, we need to be doing our best to also follow these instructions.
Hey kids, welcome to Memory Verse, where we learn how to memorize verses. Today's verse is Exodus 12:13. Now before we dive into this verse, we're going to read it a couple times first. Alright, here we go. Blood shall be a sign for you, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. Exodus 12:13. Let's do that one more time. Blood shall be a sign for you, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. Exodus 12:13. Now, in the events leading up to this verse, there was many plagues brought upon Egypt by Moses and God. Pharaoh didn't let the Israelites go, and so God brought upon plagues to help to convince Pharaoh to let his people go. But none of these plagues worked. And so God had one more plague, which was to kill every firstborn son of every family. And so to get out of this plague, the Israelites were able to kill a lamb or a goat and spread the blood all over the door frame so that God will pass over their household and not the son. And this was only given instructions to the Israelites and not the Egyptians, so that Pharaoh would let his people go. Now, the blood was a sign for God that he would pass over their house and not kill their sons. And even though the Israelites were given the instructions, if they didn't follow them, their firstborn sons would die as well. So they had to follow these instructions very clearly, otherwise God wouldn't pass over their household. Now, this might seem kind of weird because we don't have like lambs or goats to kill in our time, right? But for us, we have the story of Jesus who died and shed his blood for us that God might pass over his judgment and spare us from death from our sins. So likewise, as the Israelites killed lambs and goats to spread over their blood to pass over their judgment, Jesus also died for us so that his blood will let God pass over on our judgment for our sin. So in that, we're going to wrap things up and read this verse a couple more times, and we'll be done. Alright, let's go. Blood shall be a sign for you, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. Exodus 12:13. And one last time, blood shall be a sign for you, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. Exodus 12:13. Good job, guys, and I'll see you next time.
Hi guys, my name is Danielle and I'm going to teach you how to make an origami fish. Now what you just need is a piece of origami paper, and I have a blue one, and if you don't want blue you can take any color you want. And also if you want to draw a face on it you have to get a pencil, and if you don't want to draw a face it's fine. And now I'm going to teach you how to make it. So first you're going to do this, make the flap to the other flap, and then fold it. Make sure you make nice sharp creases. Next, you're going to unfold it, do it to the other side. Next, unfold it. Now, you have to get these two. You see this and this part too. You have to squish it in. It's called a mountain fold. After that, you're going to flip it over, get one flap, and then do this. And then flip it over. You got your fish.
Ta-da! You want to draw a face on it?
Yep. And I'm going to draw a face on it now.
Cute.
And now let's add some scales. There we go.
Ta-da!
Bye.